Hey everyone, welcome to today's Helm Weekly Developer Meeting. It is August 25th, 2022. I think the agenda is fairly light, but no announcements to start. And then for discussions, I have two. I went through some of the repos this week and noticed that there are some tickets that we can address, but haven't been. So the first one is issue, I think it's 1832 or 1321. Sorry.
13.
I think it's 1321. Okay, yeah. Basically, there is a contributor who's asked to join the Helm repo in order to contribute. They have been working on Chinese stocks. So per Bridget's point, I think it makes sense for them to help review those, because right now, basically, we're using Google Translate to see if people's translations look correct. That being said, it looks like our guidelines dictate that we do the nomination via the public mailing list, and then the repo maintainers will vote. Okay, so Bridget,
I noticed when we were looking at this that he had actually gone and nominated himself on the public mailing list, which is great.
Oh, I see.
So like that step is done.
Yeah,
that's why it's confusing, right? Because then he also opened that issue. But I think because he did the step of self-nominating, I think the next step is the private vote. But then he also self-nominated as a Helm maintainer, which is cool. But then that set of maintainers would need to vote.
So there's two nominations then?
There's two nominations. He nominated himself for Helm which is cool. And then he also nominated himself for Helm, which is cool.
Okay.
But those are like two separate votes.
Okay, so I will address the repo, and
Awesome.
I guess it's you and myself and maybe a couple other people are in that repo, so I will gather those votes, and I'm just also going to just ping him on, or ping this person at on GitHub and make sure that they're still interested, because it is originally from June. Cool. Okay.
We all had a busy summer, but I'm glad we're getting up to speed here.
Yeah. If anyone has any thoughts or objections or whatnot, feel free to comment, let me know. And this kind of leads me to the next one. So the next PR is 1342, and it is someone looking to make edits. I think they were trying to edit the existing Chinese documents. And I don't know if everyone knows this, but in Chinese, there's simplified Chinese and there's traditional Chinese. So traditional Chinese is just like the words are, there are more strokes. It's a little bit more complex. And then kind of in like the latter half of the last century, they introduced simplified Chinese. And so there's a little bit of a political element here that I wanted to address, because this person wanted to like make the simplify Chinese into traditional, and there are politics involved. I won't go into it. However, I think that it does make sense to maybe have a traditional and simplified version would be my proposal, given that people who work in certain Chinese countries, like actually, like as an example, like I can read some traditional Chinese, I can't read simplified. So there's actually like some accessibility there where people who know traditional can't read simplified, and some people who read simplified can't read traditional. So my proposal would be that we actually create a different set of docs for traditional. And I think as of right now, this would probably be the first traditional doc that has been translated, traditional Chinese doc that has been translated. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts here. If anyone's seen other projects do this. I think Bridget mentioned that the docs for Kubernetes are just in simplified. Yeah. So but it is an accessibility because you can't read both, like depending on where you are. So.
No, thank you so much for going into detail and giving us context there. When I looked at how Kubernetes does it, I realized something. In Helm, we are just saying ZH, and that's really not good enough, because that's why I think Kubernetes lists ZHCN. And probably this other person wants to translate for ZHCHT or ZHTW or whatever one they want to use. There's a number, and I feel like as I'm not a Chinese speaker, so I'm not going to try to dictate to that person which code they want to use. But like, there's a number of standard codes that they probably want to pick one that they would translate under. And we probably should deprecate ZH and like maybe set up an alias where we forward it to ZHCN, but we probably shouldn't be using just the ZH code because I guess it's not valid. I didn't realize that when we originally set this up, but I think that's why Kubernetes uses, if you go look at like the Kubernetes link that I put there and you kind of pull down the like the translations and kind of look at each one, if you switch to say French, it just says FR. And of course, our French-speaking friends will tell us that there's politics there, and obviously, Canadian French is going to be very different. And yes, of course, but the Kubernetes docs use FR. They use ZHCN for not just ZH. So I don't know. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Is ZH ever used? Like, I didn't actually recognize that like at all.
Yeah, I think it's, as far as I can tell, like ZH by itself is not very useful because it just kind of is like Chinese, any Chinese, why not? Which, that's not really a thing. So
yeah, because if you
I think we made a mistake basically.
Like even if you look at like the iOS keyboard, there's like simplified Chinese and traditional Chinese. Yeah, so I think that would demonstrate that there's like a use case for both. Yeah. I'm just not sure, like,
yeah,
I assume it's relatively easy to like set up a whole like a new site for like traditional Chinese, because okay.
Yeah, so our directions on the Helm localization page says how to set up a new one. But I think one thing we might want to work with. Yeah, go ahead.
I guess the bigger problem is the long-term maintenance, right? So that
we don't make any promises for we don't make any promises for long-term anyone maintaining. So like, say somebody translates something to, I don't know, Norwegian, and they like get Norwegian added as a language, and then they translate one page. That Norwegian will show up as a language. People can switch to it, but any other pages they go to, it'll just default back to English.
Yeah.
So like, it's not really burdensome for us to have an extra language, even if it only gets a few pages translated. I see what you're saying, because we don't want to commit the project to having translators on staff. We don't. None of our language. It's all like user contributed, best effort localization. So like, I'm not worried about that. I do think that this is a place where we might have, if YXX Hero wants to, be a new maintainer, probably can help us with the, hey, we should probably, when we fix this, we should get this tree in and this tree in. We probably should have more than one, but I'm just guessing based on what Kubernetes does.
Yeah. How, like, is this just the first time someone who is doing the translations has proposed themselves to be a maintainer? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Because I was wondering, like, what about all the other languages, right? Like we
just got a pull request from somebody who like threw some stuff in, and we were like, thanks, but they didn't like. I think the nice thing about this particular maintainer, our proposed maintainer, likes the idea of reviewing other people's pull requests and maintaining docs going forward. And I've definitely seen like I think that's really good.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that they would probably be, assuming that they are willing, like they're probably the most qualified to help with also doing like the traditional stuff. I mean, like not necessarily saying that they have to do all those translations, but at least with reviewing, because it's like, it's kind of weird. It's like between traditional and simplified, most of the words are the same, but some of them are just like, yeah, it's like, it just like, it looks like it's like less strokes. So it's like, you kind of have to guess if it's the same word. Like, I don't know if they're going to be well versed in traditional Chinese, but it's closer than the rest of us, I think. Do you like, what would the next steps be? Like, should I comment on like the PR and be like, hey, instead of like directly editing the existing simplified docs, like how would you like, yeah, like
Yeah, I would
propose
just,
a whole new
I
set,
mean,
like
let's
traditional?
see. I guess we would probably want to know which code do they want to translate for, because they probably know. Like, I want to do ZHCHT, or I want to do
Oh, you mean sort of like
HTW.
the
Yeah,
language?
like ask
Okay.
them, just be like, hey, we realized we made an error just having ZH.
Yeah.
So like, we're gonna fix that, but and then maybe send them the link for setting up a new language, and be basically like, just here, this is
Okay.
the link. Please set it up with the correct code for the one you want to translate. Because they
Okay.
clearly don't want ZHCN, which is fine, but they probably know which one they want.
Yeah. Okay. I will follow up on that PR. Cool.
Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome. Cool.
I think we can move on to the next one. Okay, next agenda item is for Andy. Do you want to talk more about PR 269?
I do. Thank you. So 269 is a HIP. I used to work with the original creator of the first HIP, Luke, good friend of mine. He no longer has the time to maintain that and to follow recommendations. So essentially I grabbed his branch, forked off of it, and then created a new one. I just wanted to put that out there so that we can redirect conversation there. He also commented and closed the original HIP. I brought this particular HIP up a couple times. I'm really hoping to get it merged at some point. I seem to come to only the meetings where like Matt and Scott and all those are not here, which is fine. It's summertime. I get it. So I'll just keep coming and keep making notes, and hopefully we can get this merged at some point. I did address one of the issues that was brought up in the original HIP when I created the new version. So I think it should be good to go, but happy to make any more changes that need to be made if any folks have thoughts. So just wanted to bring that to folks' attention.
I'm just taking a quick look at it. And I think that, like, I mean, obviously it's before merging, at some point we'll assign it a number, which can be done when it's being discussed. Did they tell you this needed a HIP? If there's only one PR and one issue, usually there isn't, but maybe the problem was it was just too big a change.
Yeah, because we're modifying the actual structure of the release object, it felt like it needed a little bit more attention. And then as far as, the security implications and assumptions of adding the tarball digest, I think also warranted the discussion that happened. And there was a lot of good feedback there. So I think it's worth the HIP, even though it is a little more effort. So.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the current PR that proposes a solution too, just to see if we have anything unaddressed on it right now. So it looks like we definitely need to get this PR reviewed, obviously.
Yeah, and I didn't want to add, all the people. It felt a little excessive. So whoever you think is appropriate would be super helpful.
Bridget, is this something that could make the next minor release?
So thank you for bringing that up, Karen. That's really important. Karen, do you want to kind of give the overview of what would need to happen to get what would need to happen to get into the coming minor release?
I think it would have
I forget
to be
what the timelines are.
Labeled, and then the release candidate is September. I think it was September 5th. And then
odds are good we won't have implementation ready by then anyway.
Okay.
So I can pretty much, if it's the 5th, there's no way I'm going to be able to get the implementation out by then. I just wanted to say,
we're not trying to rush you at all. Yeah. This is a process. I just want to make sure we're setting, thank you, Karen. I want to make sure we're setting the correct expectations of how fast this moves. But I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the PR 10369 that's referenced in the HIP, and it does happen to have merge conflicts.
Yeah.
Just letting you know that now, so that because if we want to start moving this forward, it obviously has merge conflicts that you're going to want to take a look at.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Once the HIP's approved, I'll definitely go and, work on the implementation after that.
Oh, okay.
It's not a
cool.
rush to get it
Absolutely.
in. I just wanted to get the HIP
Okay,
approved so that
good.
I'm not just throwing PRs out there that aren't going to get approved. So
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Why don't we, Karen, do you want to ping folks on the maintainers,
Sure.
ping some maintainers, and just to point out that HIP, the revised HIP, because I feel like if we can get people's eyes on that HIP who weren't on the call this time, that'll be progress.
that would be super helpful. Thank you.
And then just following up on the timeline thing. So yeah, I think it is September 6th for release candidate. And then I just had it open. Anyway, after that, yeah, the next release, I don't have the exact date, but it's gonna be in like 3 to 4 months. So you'll have some time in between to get it in. Cool.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I will follow up with the maintainers.
Awesome.
Thanks, y'all.
And yeah, you may have probably guessed we do try to kind of fast follow the Kubernetes releases by about a month. So that's kind of your guidepost. Guidepost in your
That's good
mind
to
is
know.
like, we'll, and it says it in our docs somewhere, but just, like we want to make sure that if anything comes to pass with a Kubernetes release, that we have that well in hand and ready to ship with the next Helm release. So
Makes a lot of sense.
so that gives you a timeline to start working on stuff once the HIP is approved.
The 25 release snuck up on me anyway. So
How 25 took like 3 minutes, right? Like, how did that happen? Just
I
don't know.
mean, well, it's 3 releases a year, so 4 months, right?
but I feel like 1.24 took an age and 1.25 took like a week and a half in my mind.
Mm,
I think 1.24 was also like around KubeCon too, right? So that might have been like the weird, like anomaly.
Sure.
Cool. All right.
Okay.
Does anyone else have other agenda items? If not, that was our last one. Okay. Can we get some volunteers for assignments next week? We have moderator, notes, issue triage, pre-R review. I know there are people that are probably going to join next week's call that aren't here. I will be out next week.
I have a conflict. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I'll follow up with
So I
that
can't sign up
as well.
I can definitely
Okay,
take
otherwise,
notes.
I'm sure we
Thank
can.
you.
That is much appreciated. Yeah, that's much appreciated, Andy, if you are able to.
No problem. Yeah, I'll be here next week. So
All right, I think we're good to wrap up then. Thanks everyone for joining today's call. I'm sure some of you will be here next week amongst others, but I will not see you. See you in 2 weeks from me. All right, bye.
thanks, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.